So it's a very traditional meal that Jesus was at. And sometimes, I guess, I go over the words every Sunday when we do communion to remind people of that day, but a lot of times we don't remember all the way back to the original why they were even celebrating that time anyway. But then when Jesus comes to the earth, and even though, and let's back up a little bit from that night, from the Passover meal. When Jesus started his ministry, a lot of his ministry was based around food too, not just the ceremonial meals, but although he did do the ceremonies, he also, in his ministry, went to different people's houses. And he hung out with certain people that the church folks didn't think was a good idea. He went out with publicans, not Republicans. I mean, that would have been all right if he went out with Republicans. But he went out with he went out with publicans and people called sinners, people that didn't belong to the church, and ate with them. What? Jesus went out with he didn't go with the church folks. He went over there with a group of sinful folks. He sure did. Constantly he went and ate with people. Remember Zacchaeus? It's tax time. Have you done your taxes? I have. I know it's hard for you to believe, but I really did. Zacchaeus is the IRS man. And Zacchaeus is a little short man like me. He can't see in a big crowd. So he has to get up high, and Zacchaeus climbs up in a tree, and when Jesus is passing by, Jesus calls up to Zacchaeus and said, "Zacchaeus, come down out of that tree, because I'm going to your house to eat with you today." What? Jesus invited himself to the IRS office to have lunch. And you know what? Things changed that day at the IRS office. Because, see, they were cheating people out of money. I don't mean they were taking what they were supposed to have. I mean they were taking more than what they were supposed to have. They were cheating people. And Jesus Jesus said, "Oh no, Zacchaeus, something's got to change around here." And something changed around there that day. Something changed around there. And I suspect it wasn't just with Zacchaeus. It was with other people in that office too. Jesus went out so much and ate with people that were not church people that the church people said, "Look at him. He's a wino." Jesus, a wino. He's a glutton. He goes over there and feasts with those people and won't hang out with the church people. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that you can never hang out with church people. Although sometimes you may have more victory if you don't. I don't know how that works, but sometimes, as long as you keep it in good fellowship, then it's good. But if it's not good fellowship, then maybe, you find some sinners to hang out with. And maybe, though, you do it on purpose. And because Jesus always had a purpose, He was not just chatting with these people. He wasn't just out to have a good time. He had a message to deliver to them. Now, if you'll notice, Jesus didn't shove it down everybody's throat. But because He was so different, because He was willing to step in the steps that they were stepping in, to go to the places they were going, and to just be one of them, it started making a difference. He started tearing down walls. He started breaking down barriers. Because, when Jesus, He was, here He is celebrating, we find Him at the communion table, what we call the communion table, having the Last Supper, which is a very traditional thing, and yet here is this man doing a traditional ceremony and having a traditional ceremonial meal, and yet he's such a progressive, thoughtful person. You say, oh, I don't like that word. I'm not meaning that in political, so don't take that. Don't be offended by that, is what I want to say. If you're offended by those of us of progressive thought, then please forgive me. That's not my intent. But he had a new message to get across to them. That it wasn't just about the tradition and the ceremony, even though there was nothing wrong with the tradition and the ceremony, but there was more to the story. In fact, after that night, there was going to be a lot more to the story. Amen? There was going to be a lot more that thousands of years later we're still talking about. And we're still commemorating every Sunday. But here's Jesus with this progressive thought of, you've got to go beyond all of that stuff back there. You've got to move forward. You can't just stay back there. You've got to look at the message that I have for you. I went, we should have a message. Our life should be a message. I went to the Lady Gaga concert last night. And she was wild. It was fun. I was glad I couldn't sell my ticket, because I had a great time. And we were talking, a bunch of us, Tom and Rick and I were there, and some other people that they know. And the thing that we talked about, the cab driver asked us on the way back to the house, well, what was the one thing, what was the best part of the night? What was your favorite thing that happened? And none of us had the same thought. And I started looking back. There wasn't like one song that was better than another song, or one performance that was better than another performance. But we all said this at the end. But she sent a message, loud and clear. And that message was, and she kept saying it all through the performance, just every other song, she would say, "You are beautiful. You were the weird one. You are beautiful. You are just the way you were created. You are just you. You are a superstar. You are," and she just kept saying what all you are. The message was clear that we are all God's creation, and we can be what we want to be if we get over the fear and just be ourselves. It was amazing. I thought the message was very clear, and it was repeated over and over, and all of us agreed on the message, even though none of us agreed on any particular point of the show. And there were high points for all of us, but none of us saw the same thing, except we all got the message. Jesus had a message. In Christian churches today, so let me just talk about Christian churches, not the Jewish folks, and not the other faiths. It is amazing to me that in 2011, we are still talking about and arguing about and voting whether to and whether not to, who can serve at the communion table, who can come and receive from the communion table, even what the elements are. The elements, the bread, the wine, and in our case, grape juice, non-fermented. We watch out for our AA people. It amazes me that we've come this far, and we're so willing to hold on and hold fast to such traditions that Jesus himself said, stop that. Jesus, you say, well, he didn't actually say stop it. He lived it, didn't he? By his own actions, things were different. You see, it doesn't matter to me as far as who is serving. And I actually had an MCCer call me a few weeks ago and say, I'm just not sure about this person that's behind the table that's distributing the bread and the juice. That you know, they call themselves a priest, but they have no credentials. And I said, but we believe in MCC, in the priesthood of all believers. That means that Clyde can come up here and serve you just as good as I can. It means Melinda can come up here and serve you just like I can. You can be male or female. You can be both or neither. That's right. Not because you have a degree from an institution, but because you are a believer in what it represents. And then we have churches, you know, I say this every Sunday, in MCC, we serve in open communion. That means everybody's welcome at the table. That means you don't have to be a member of this church or any other church. Doesn't mean you have to be baptized or not baptized. Doesn't mean you have to have your name on a roll or not on a roll. Because there are churches. You got to come to the table only if you're a member of that church. In good standing. And if you're not, you don't get to come. Now, in these huge churches, I'm never quite sure how they know, but I've heard, I've heard, they know. They have the list. Oh my goodness, we don't want the list. But there are churches that will not let you come to the table to receive the elements if you're not a member of that church or if you're not baptized into their particular doctrine. And there's still arguments and church denominations that are splitting over these kinds of issues. Can a man serve it? Can only the priest? And I'm going to tell you, even in MCC, I've had a few people that would not go, because we usually have multiple servers for communion. They would not go to anybody but the priest, the pastor. Because they just had it ingrained in them. It's got to be the priest, and it's got to be male. We'd be hurting in over half of our churches today in MCC because over half our church, the priests are women. That's right. I think we're at 52 or 54% female ministers in our denomination right now. We even have arguments about the bread and the juice. I say we, I don't mean in this building. I mean in the Christian community. Church denominations that teach it has to be this, and you have to say these words over it, and you have to bless it. And there are some people that believe that it's already blessed, and it's just symbolic, and, you know, it's a piece of paper, and it's some juice, but it's very symbolic of what Christ did on that Last Supper. There are other people that believe that it is actual flesh and actual blood. There are people that believe that once you say a certain word, like in this holy moment, or as you bless it with either the motion or the words, in that moment it becomes flesh and blood. Others that believe once you take it into your body, it changes inside of your body. It doesn't matter to me what you believe. I don't think it's worth splitting a whole denomination about.